She would not move from the door. Not for food. Not for warmth. Not even when her 5 tiny puppies cried behind her in the storm. The German Shepherd stood there soaked to the skin, shaking from cold, staring at the man inside the farmhouse, as if her whole life depended on whether he understood what she was trying to say. And when former Navy SEAL Logan Reed finally opened the door she refused to leave, he discovered the reason a mother had been willing to risk everything. Rain slammed against the roof of the old farmhouse, hard enough to make the windows tremble. Thunder rolled across the dark Tennessee hills, and the dirt road outside Logan's property had already turned into a long brown river of mud. It was the kind of spring storm that made most people stay inside, lock the doors, and wait for morning. Logan stood beneath the porch overhang with a cup of black coffee cooling in his hand, watching sheets of rain sweep over the valley. For 3 years, this place had been his refuge. No commands crackling through a headset. No alarms in the middle of the night. No one depending on him to make the right decision in 3 seconds or less. Just a quiet farmhouse outside town, a few broken fence posts, an old truck that complained every morning, and more silence than he knew what to do with. Then he heard the barking. At first, he thought it was part of the storm, a sharp sound carried by the wind. Then it came again, and again, desperate, insistent, too steady to ignore. Logan set down the coffee and stepped to the edge of the porch. Near the road, half hidden by rain, stood a German Shepherd. Her coat was drenched. Mud covered her legs. Water dripped from her muzzle, but she did not run for cover. She stood perfectly still, facing the house, barking as if she had been waiting for him. Logan frowned. He had seen her before, always at a distance. A stray female that wandered the nearby pastures and disappeared whenever anyone came too close. She never begged, never approached, never trusted people enough to stay. But today was different. The dog took a few steps toward him, barked once, then turned and looked over her shoulder toward the back of his property. Logan felt something shift in his chest. He knew that look. In the SEAL teams, you learned to read what people did not say. Fear in the eyes, tension in the shoulders, a request buried under pride. Animals had their own language, but the message could be just as clear. Something was wrong. "What is it, girl?" he called through the rain. The shepherd trotted several yards away, then stopped and looked back again. Logan grabbed his rain jacket from the hook beside the door. Before he followed her, he glanced toward the camera he had set up near the porch for his channel. He had been recording repairs around the farm lately, little pieces of quiet life people seemed to enjoy. He almost shut it off, then changed his mind. "If you're watching this," he said under his breath, pulling up his hood, "tell me in the comments if you've ever seen a dog ask for help like this. And subscribe if you believe animals understand more than we give them credit for. Because I have a feeling this girl is about to show us something I won't forget." Then he stepped into the storm. The shepherd moved fast, but never too far ahead. She led him across the yard, through ankle-deep mud and wet grass, toward an old shed near the rear edge of the property. The structure had been there long before Logan bought the place. Its roof sagged in the middle. Loose boards rattled whenever the wind came through. He had planned to tear it down one day, but like a lot of plans after the Navy, he kept putting it off. The dog slipped beneath a small overhang attached to the shed and stopped beside a pile of old blankets and straw. Logan knelt, rain dripping from the brim of his hood. 5 puppies lay huddled together. German Shepherd puppies. Tiny, barely old enough to stumble around on their paws. They should have been nosing at the straw, climbing over one another, squeaking for their mother. Instead, they barely moved. One shivered so hard its little sides trembled. Another lay with its head resting against a sibling, breathing too shallowly. Logan's stomach tightened. "Oh no," he whispered. The mother pressed against his side, then looked from his face to the puppies. She nudged one with her nose. Gentle but urgent, then looked at him again. Help them. He did not need words to understand. Logan took off one glove and touched the weakest puppy. Its body was warm, but the strength was gone from it. The others were no better. No blood, no bite marks, no broken limbs. The mother was thin, but not starving, and the puppies had clearly been nursing. There was no obvious reason for all 5 to be fading at once. That made it worse. The storm grew louder. Wind pushed rain through the open sides of the shed. The mother paced in a tight circle, whining softly whenever Logan touched one of the puppies. She wanted to trust him, but fear kept pulling her back. "I know," Logan said. "I know. I'm going to help them. He carried the weakest puppy against his chest and headed for the house. The mother followed, so close her shoulder bumped his leg. Then he came back for the others, one by one, until all 5 were inside the farmhouse, wrapped in dry towels near the fireplace. The mother stepped into the house only after the last puppy was safe. Even then, she did not relax. She stood over the box like a guard posted at the edge of a battlefield. Logan called the nearest emergency veterinarian. Dr. Emily Harper answered on the 3rd ring, her voice tight with concern. Flooding had blocked 2 county roads. A fallen oak had shut down the main bridge. She would come as soon as she could, but it might be hours. Hours felt like too long. Logan knelt beside the puppies. Their eyes were half closed. Their breathing remained shallow. The warmth helped, but not enough. Something invisible was stealing them away, and he could not see it. The mother suddenly lifted her head. Her ears went up. Her body stiffened. Then she walked away from the puppies and crossed the kitchen to the back door. Logan watched her scratch once at the wood. Then again. Then she turned and looked directly at him. Not at the box. Not at the fire. At him. Beyond the back door, through the curtain of rain, stood an old storage building Logan had not opened since the week he moved in. The shepherd stared toward it. Logan looked at the weak puppies, then back at the dog. For the first time that day, he realized the answer might not be inside the house at all. It might be hiding behind a door she was begging him to open. Rain continued to pound the roof as the German shepherd stood beside the back door, every muscle focused on the building across the yard. She did not bark now. She did not whine. She simply waited with the kind of patience only a frightened mother could force herself to have. Logan grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar from the mudroom. "All right," he said. "Show me." The moment he opened the door, she stepped into the rain. The yard had turned into a mess of mud and standing water. Lightning flashed above the ridge, turning the whole valley white for one frozen second. The storage building sat near the far fence line, surrounded by weeds, rusted equipment, and old lumber stacked beneath a tarp. It had once been used for farm supplies. Now it looked like something the property had forgotten. The shepherd reached the door first and stopped. She lowered her head and stared at the latch. Logan reached for the handle. The wood had swollen from years of damp weather. The padlock hanging from the latch was rusted through, but the door would not budge. He wedged the crowbar into the frame and pushed. The hinges groaned. The door shifted half an inch. A strange smell slipped out into the rain. Logan froze. It was not strong enough to knock him back. It was not smoke, not rot, not death. It was something stale and chemical, like old machinery, bad fuel, and air that had been trapped too long. He pushed harder. The door opened with a wet crack. Inside, dust floated through the beam of his flashlight. Shelves lined the walls. Boxes were stacked under tarps. Broken tools leaned in the corners. At first, nothing looked dangerous. But the smell lingered, heavier near the back wall. The mother dog stepped inside cautiously, then stopped beside a blocked vent. Leaves, dirt, and nesting material had packed themselves into the opening. Rainwater dripped through a crack in the roof and down the wall behind it. Logan knelt. Behind the debris sat an old fuel-powered generator. He remembered seeing it when he first bought the property. The previous owner said it had not run in years. Logan had never needed it, so he left it alone. But beside it were 2 cracked fuel containers. One lay on its side. A dark stain spread beneath it, soaking into the rotting wood. Logan's pulse quickened. He was not a veterinarian, but he understood enough. Bad air in a closed space. Leaking fuel. Poor ventilation. Puppies living under the overhang right beside the building, breathing whatever drifted out through gaps in the boards. Adults could survive things the young could not. The puppies had been losing a battle nobody could see. The shepherd watched him with amber eyes that seemed to ask if he finally understood. "You knew," he said quietly. Her ears flicked in the rain. Logan threw the door wide open. He found a second set of side doors jammed behind a stack of warped lumber and forced those open too. Wind swept through the building, carrying the stale odor out into the storm. He dragged the old fuel containers into the yard, then hauled them to a spot far away from the house and the shed. After that, he cleared every vent, every gap, every blocked opening he could find. It took nearly an hour. By the time he finished, his hands were numb and mud streaked his jacket. The shepherd stayed beside him the entire time. Not once did she run back to the porch. Not once did she leave him to face the storm alone. She watched every move, as if making sure the invisible danger had truly been pulled out by the roots. When they returned to the farmhouse, the rain had softened. Inside, the puppies lay curled together in the warmth. Logan knelt beside them and held his breath. One puppy lifted its head. Another shifted closer to its mother. Tiny changes. Almost nothing. But they were changes. The shepherd stepped into the box and lowered herself beside them. She touched each puppy with her nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she looked up at Logan with exhaustion, hope, and a trust he was not sure he had earned. He sat back against the wall, soaked and shivering. Outside, the storm moved away across the hills. Inside, for the first time since the desperate barking began, Logan let himself believe they might make it. Morning came clean and bright. The storm had washed the valley until every blade of grass shone in the sunlight. Water dripped from the porch roof. Birds returned to the fence line. The dirt road was still scarred with mud, but the sky above the farmhouse was blue. Logan woke on the living room floor with a stiff neck and a blanket half pulled over his shoulders. The mother dog had not moved from the puppies. She lifted her head when he sat up, but the panic in her eyes had softened. He crossed the room and looked into the box. One puppy yawned. Another pushed a clumsy paw against its sibling. The weakest one raised its head, tried to stand, and toppled gently back into the blanket. Logan smiled for the first time in hours. "That's more like it," he whispered. The mother touched her nose to his wrist. A few hours later, Dr. Emily Harper arrived in a mud-splattered SUV, carrying 2 medical bags and the tired expression of someone who had been fighting flooded roads all morning. She stepped into the living room, saw the puppies, and immediately went to work. The shepherd watched every movement. She allowed the veterinarian close, but she did not take her eyes off the puppies for a second. Dr. Harper checked breathing, heart rates, temperature, hydration, gums, weight, and reflexes. She listened to each tiny chest. She asked Logan about the shed, the generator, the fuel containers, the blocked vents. By the time she finished, her expression had eased. "You caught it in time," she said. Relief moved through Logan so fast he had to sit down. "So that was it?" he asked. "Most likely. Poor air quality, exposure to fumes, cold stress, maybe a little dehydration on top of it. Puppies this young do not have much margin. Their bodies crash fast." Dr. Harper looked toward the mother and smiled gently. But this girl noticed something was wrong before anybody else could have. The shepherd was lying beside the box with her chin resting on the edge. Every few minutes, her eyes moved across the puppies as though she were counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Logan watched her and felt a quiet ache behind his ribs. He had seen soldiers count their people after a firefight with that same silent intensity. A head count was not just numbers. It was the difference between breathing and breaking. Dr. Harper prepared supplements, gave instructions for feeding and monitoring, and told Logan to keep them warm, hydrated, and in fresh air. No drama, no miracle medicine, just steady care. By afternoon, sunlight filled the farmhouse. The puppies slept more deeply now, their little bodies no longer fighting so hard for every breath. Logan cleaned out a larger space near the fireplace and built a safer enclosure out of old boards and wire panels. He lined it with fresh blankets, set water nearby for the mother, and dragged a chair over so he could watch them. The German shepherd watched him back. "You still don't trust me completely, do you?" he said. Her ears twitched. Logan laughed softly. "Fair enough." Near sunset, the smallest puppy did something that stopped him cold. It stood on trembling legs, took 3 crooked steps, and bumped its nose into its mother's side. The shepherd lowered her head and licked the puppy's face. The others stirred. A tiny tail moved. Then another. Weak paws pressed into the blankets. Life returned in pieces so small most people would have missed them. Logan did not miss a single one. Years in the military had taught him plenty about courage, about discipline, about staying calm when fear tried to take over. But sitting on the floor of his living room, watching a half-pound puppy fight its way back to life, he felt a different kind of bravery in the room. A mother's bravery. The kind that did not need medals or witnesses. The sun slid behind the hills. Warm orange light stretched across the floor. Bella, as Logan had begun calling her in his mind, rested beside her puppies while they nursed. Then, without warning, she lifted her head. Her ears rose. Logan followed her gaze down the hallway. Nothing moved. Bella stood and walked toward the front door, then paused beneath a window where an old wooden chest sat covered in dust. It had belonged to the previous owner of the house, and Logan had ignored it since the day he moved in. Bella touched the chest with her nose. Then she looked back at him. It was the same look she had given him before leading him to the storage building. Logan stared at her. "What now?" he asked. Bella's tail moved once. Once again, the mother who had saved her puppies seemed to know exactly where another answer was hidden. The chest sat beneath the hallway window like a forgotten piece of the house itself. Dust softened its edges. Sunlight fell across the lid in pale rectangles. Logan had walked past it hundreds of times without curiosity. It was just one more thing left behind by people who were gone. But Bella stood beside it with absolute certainty. Logan knelt and brushed away the dust. The wood smelled old and dry. When he lifted the lid, the hinges gave a tired groan, and the scent of paper, cedar, and time rose into the hallway. Inside were photographs, letters, notebooks, and little keepsakes wrapped in yellowing cloth. Nothing valuable in the way banks would measure value. But Logan had learned that the most important things people leave behind usually do not shine. Bella sat beside him while he sorted through the contents. Family photographs, Christmas cards, receipts from a feed store, seed packets pressed flat between papers, a small tin filled with buttons. Then, near the bottom, his hand closed around a leather-bound journal. The cover was faded and cracked. Inside, the first page carried a name written in careful handwriting. Margaret Collins. Logan knew the name. Neighbors had mentioned her when he bought the farmhouse. A widow. Quiet. Kind. Lived alone for years. Loved animals more than most people loved anything. He turned the pages slowly. Most entries were ordinary. Weather. Garden notes. Repairs. The kind of details that made up a life. Then one entry stopped him. Spring. Found a German shepherd near the creek today. Thin. Hungry. Terrified. She would not come close, but she watched me from the trees. Logan looked at Bella. She leaned closer, nose almost touching the page. He kept reading. Summer. The shepherd finally trusts me enough to take food from my hand. Sweet girl. Smart eyes. She is expecting puppies. A chill moved across Logan's arms. He turned another page. Autumn. Built a shelter near the shed for her and the babies. She refuses to sleep inside the house, but she lets me sit nearby now. I believe she understands kindness, even if she is still afraid of it. The words blurred for a moment. Logan swallowed and continued. Winter. My health is failing again. The shepherd still comes every morning. Sometimes I think she is checking on me more than I am checking on her. Bella sat motionless. The final entry was dated nearly 18 years earlier. If anyone ever finds this journal, please know this. The shepherd and her puppies were never mine. I only cared for them when they needed help. The funny thing is, they spent far more time caring for me. Logan closed the journal halfway and stared at the floor. The room felt quiet in a different way now. The timeline did not fit for Bella to be the same dog. Of course it did not. But the resemblance between the dog in the journal and the mother sitting beside him was impossible to ignore. Same amber eyes. Same intelligence. Same fierce dignity. Maybe Bella was a descendant. Maybe her mother or grandmother had once belonged to that wild line of shepherds Margaret had loved. Or maybe loyalty had a memory all its own. Bella gently placed one paw on the edge of the journal. Logan gave a quiet laugh, though his throat felt tight. You wanted me to find this, he said. Her tail tapped the floor once. He carried the journal into the living room and sat beside the puppies. One by one, they stirred awake. Tiny paws, tiny noses, tiny lives that had almost ended before they had a chance to begin. Logan looked from the journal to Bella, then to the old farmhouse around him. Until that moment, he had thought the rescue began when Bella barked from the road. Now he wondered if the story had started long before he ever arrived. Maybe kindness had been planted in this place years ago. Maybe it had simply been waiting for someone to open the door again. The journal stayed on the kitchen table long after dark. Logan returned to it again and again while Bella slept beside the fireplace and the puppies nursed in a warm pile. The pages carried more than old memories. They carried evidence that a woman he had never met had once listened to a frightened dog the same way he had listened. Years later, another German shepherd had come to the same property in the middle of another crisis. Coincidence, maybe, but it felt larger than that. By morning, the storm seemed like a distant dream. The air smelled of wet grass and clean earth. Logan stepped onto the porch with coffee and found Bella already awake, sitting at the edge of the yard, watching the sunrise like she had earned the right to see another one. A truck appeared at the end of the dirt road. Logan recognized it immediately. Henry Walker, his nearest neighbor, retired farmer, and unofficial keeper of every story in the valley. Henry climbed out with a toolbox in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "Heard you had a rough night," Henry said. "News travels fast. Around here, bad weather and good dogs are everybody's business." A few minutes later, they sat at the kitchen table while Bella watched from the living room. Logan showed Henry the journal. The old farmer adjusted his glasses and turned the pages carefully. His expression changed when he saw Margaret's name. "Well, I'll be," Henry murmured. "You knew her?" Everybody knew Margaret Collins. Henry lifted one of the photographs tucked inside the journal. It showed a smiling, gray-haired woman seated beside a German shepherd with several puppies gathered around her boots. And everybody knew that dog. Logan leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Henry smiled. "Not famous like television famous. Local famous. That shepherd had a habit of showing up when someone needed help." Bella lifted her head from the living room. Henry glanced over at her and chuckled softly. Folks joked she knew trouble before people did. Probably just a smart dog with good instincts. But I can tell you this, strange things happened around her. Cows found before storms. A lost child led back toward a fence line. Margaret getting checked on when her heart condition got bad. That dog was something else. Logan looked at Bella. Her eyes stayed fixed on the conversation, calm and unreadable. Henry closed the journal with care. "Margaret never had children," he said. "Lost her husband young. This place got real quiet after that. She used to say the animals kept her alive longer than the doctors expected." The words settled into the room. After Henry left, Logan walked the property with Bella beside him. Sunlight spread across the valley. Wildflowers had started to open along the fence line. The storage building stood with its doors wide open, airing out under the blue sky. Bella stopped in front of it. She looked at the building, then back at the farmhouse. Logan followed her gaze. At first, he thought she was still worried about the danger. Then he understood. The building had only been the clue. The house was the answer. Warmth, safety, shelter, future. Bella had not only been asking him to save her puppies. She had been asking whether this place could become home. That evening, Logan carried the puppy box onto the porch. The tiny shepherds tumbled over one another under their mother's watchful eyes. One nosed at a blade of grass. Another tried to chase a butterfly and fell over its own paws. Bella lay down beside Logan for the first time, not from exhaustion, but from trust. The breeze moved softly through the fields. The puppies played in the gold light. And a family that had arrived as strangers slowly began becoming something more. The days that followed settled into a rhythm neither Logan nor Bella had planned. Morning light rolled over the hills. The puppies woke in a tangle of paws and tiny growls. Bella ate better, rested more, and slowly stopped staring at every door as if danger might come through it. Logan repaired fences, cleaned the shed, checked the old building twice a day, and pretended he was only keeping the dogs until they were strong enough to leave. Bella did not seem fooled. 3 weeks after the storm, the puppies were almost unrecognizable. The weakest one now pushed through the others for food. The curious one kept escaping the blanket nest. The boldest tried to climb into Logan's boot. Dr. Harper visited twice and declared all 5 healthy. "They are lucky," she told him. Logan looked at Bella. "They have their mother to thank for that." The veterinarian smiled. And maybe the man who listened. He did not answer. Praise still made him uncomfortable. In the military, the job mattered more than the person doing it. After he left, the quiet had stripped even that away. He had spent years trying to figure out what usefulness looked like when no one was calling his name through a radio. Then Bella had shown up in the rain and needed him. One evening, just before sunset, Bella walked to the old storage building and sat outside the open doors. Logan found her there watching the valley. She did not seem afraid. She seemed thoughtful, as if making sure the place that had hurt her puppies could not hurt anyone else. He sat beside her in the grass. "You saved them," he said. Bella glanced at him. "I just opened a door." She rested her head on his knee. The gesture nearly undid him. A few days later, Margaret's journal revealed another piece of the property Logan had never explored. One entry mentioned a hidden pasture beyond the northern ridge, a small sanctuary where Margaret brought injured animals when they needed quiet. Curious, Logan packed water, a first aid kit, and a leash he knew Bella would not need. The puppies stayed safely in their fenced enclosure while Bella led him toward the ridge. The hike took nearly an hour. Wildflowers covered the hillsides. Grass moved in waves beneath the wind. Bella walked ahead with confidence, stopping every so often to make sure he followed. At the top of the ridge, the valley opened into a meadow surrounded by trees. Logan stopped. The place was beautiful. A spring-fed pond reflected the sky. Tall grass swayed along the edges. Wildflowers filled the open ground. Time had hidden the meadow, but it had not erased it. Near the pond, Logan found small wooden markers weathered by years of sun and rain. Names, dates, short messages, dogs, horses, barn cats, creatures Margaret had loved and buried with dignity. Under a large oak tree stood one marker more worn than the rest. Logan brushed moss away from the inscription and read what remained. To the shepherd who taught me that being needed is one of life's greatest gifts. The words went through him like a hand placed gently over an old wound. Being needed. For years, Logan had thought he missed danger, adrenaline, movement, mission. Maybe he had been wrong. Maybe what he missed was simpler and harder to admit. He missed matching. Bella splashed at the edge of the pond, then came back and sat beside him beneath the oak. Together they looked across the hidden pasture. Logan understood then that the farmhouse had never been just a house. It had been a refuge once. And somehow, because a mother dog refused to give up, it was becoming one again. Summer settled over the valley. The puppies grew fast, the way puppies do, as if each morning added new inches to their legs and new confidence to their hearts. Their personalities became impossible to miss. One was fearless, always first to investigate a sound. One was gentle and affectionate, forever crawling into Logan's lap. One was stubborn enough to argue with a fence post. One was curious about everything that moved. And the smallest, the one who had nearly slipped away during the storm, followed Bella like a shadow. Logan named them even though he told himself he should not. Bella watched him do it with an expression that looked suspiciously like amusement. Word spread across the county. At first it was neighbors, then families from church groups, farms, and nearby towns. People came to see the puppies and hear the story. Some brought food. Some brought toys. Some brought old memories of dogs they had loved and lost. The farmhouse changed without asking permission. It became less quiet. Children laughed in the yard. Farmers leaned on fence rails and told stories. Elderly couples sat on the porch with lemonade while puppies slept across their shoes. Logan, who had bought the place to be left alone, found himself putting out extra chairs. And strangely, he did not mind. One afternoon, Dr. Harper finished a checkup, packed her bag, and paused at the door. Have you thought about what happens when they are old enough? Logan looked toward the puppies. I have been avoiding that. I figured. Good homes, right? That's what matters. Good homes, she said. And you will know them when you see them. That night, Logan sat on the porch while fireflies appeared above the grass. Bella lay beside him. The puppies slept in a pile near the steps. The idea of separating them felt wrong. Bella rose slowly and looked toward the puppies, then toward the road, then back at Logan. Another lesson. He did not want to understand it, but he did. Love was not ownership. Love was preparation. Bella had fought to keep her puppies alive. Now she was teaching them to live without hiding under her body every moment. She let them wander farther. She corrected them gently. She watched them try and fail and try again. A good parent knew when to hold close and when to let go. Families began visiting regularly. Logan asked questions that probably sounded too serious for adopting a puppy. Fenced yard or open land? Work schedule? Vet plan? Children? Other pets? What happened if the dog got sick? He visited homes before agreeing to anything. Some people laughed at his intensity. He did not care. Every puppy deserved the safety Bella had begged for in the rain. By late summer, he had found 4 families he trusted. The first puppy left on a bright August morning. Logan thought he was ready. He was not. A young couple arrived with their little daughter, a freckled girl who had visited every week and asked more questions than a police detective. They were taking the adventurous puppy, the one who chased butterflies and tried to explore beyond every fence. The puppy bounded toward them without hesitation, tail wagging so hard its whole body moved. The girl dropped to her knees and laughed as he climbed into her arms. It was perfect. That somehow made it hurt more. When their truck disappeared down the road, Logan stood on the porch staring at the dust it left behind. Bella watched calmly. No panic. No crying. She followed the truck with her eyes until it vanished, then walked back to the remaining puppies. Logan sat beside her. "You're better at this than I am," he said. Bella leaned against his leg. Over the next few weeks, the process repeated. One puppy went to a retired rancher who needed a companion after losing his old dog. Another joined a family with 3 children and enough acreage for endless running. A third became the constant shadow of a schoolteacher who lived close enough for Logan to check in whenever he wanted. And he did check. He drove to each home. He watched the puppies settle. He saw full food bowls, safe yards, soft beds, patient hands. Every visit brought relief and a strange sadness mixed together. By early September, only 2 puppies remained. The smallest and the one who followed Bella everywhere. The farmhouse felt quieter. The missing sound of paws seemed louder than the paws themselves had ever been. Logan tried to tell himself this was success. Survival had become new life. New life had become new homes. Still, the porch looked too empty. One afternoon, he sat under the oak tree reading Margaret's journal while the remaining puppies wrestled in the grass. A passage caught his eye. "We do not keep what we love by holding it close forever. We keep it by helping it become strong enough to walk forward without us." Logan closed the journal. The words hit harder than he expected. They were not only about dogs. They were about grief, about service, about the people he had lost and the life he had been trying to hold still because moving forward felt like leaving something behind. Across the yard, Bella watched her puppies with pride, not possession. That distinction mattered. A few days later, a family arrived from the next county. They had lost an elderly German shepherd earlier that year, and grief still softened the edges of their voices. The smallest puppy chose them before Logan could say much of anything. The moment they sat in the grass, he climbed into the mother's lap, tucked his head beneath her chin, and refused to move. Some decisions did not need discussion. By sunset, another puppy had gone home. Only one remained. The one who never wandered far from Bella. The one who watched Logan with sharp eyes and followed him whenever he crossed the yard. That evening, Logan sat on the porch steps while the young dog curled beside his mother beneath a sky streaked orange and gold. Crickets sang from the fence line. For a long time, Bella and her last puppy rested together. Then Bella nudged him. Not away. Forward. The puppy stood, crossed the yard, and sat beside Logan's boot. Logan looked at the puppy, then at Bella. Her expression seemed almost amused. Understanding arrived. Slowly, then all at once. "You planned this," he said. Bella blinked. Logan laughed. "You knew?" The puppy pressed against his leg. No family was coming for this one. No interview. No visit. No adoption papers spread across the kitchen table. Somehow, both Bella and the puppy had already decided where he belonged. Logan rested a hand on the young dog's head. The valley glowed in the last light of the day. One future had quietly chosen itself, and Logan realized Bella had not only saved her children. In her patient, stubborn, brilliant way, she had been building him a family. Autumn came in soft waves. Leaves turned gold along the fence lines. Cool air settled into the mornings. Smoke from distant chimneys drifted over the valley. The farmhouse found a new rhythm, not the lonely rhythm Logan had once accepted, but one with movement and breath and 2 sets of paws following him everywhere. For a while, he resisted naming the last puppy. Names mattered. Names turned temporary things into promises. But the young shepherd made resistance impossible. He followed Logan to the barn. He watched him repair gates. He sat beside the truck whenever Logan loaded tools. If Logan went into town, the puppy waited on the porch until he returned, ears up, eyes fixed on the road. One evening beneath the oak tree, Logan finally gave in. The young dog sat beside him watching the sunset. "Scout," Logan said. The puppy's ears lifted immediately. Logan smiled. "Well, I guess that settles it." From then on, Scout belonged. He grew quickly. Strong legs, bright eyes, endless curiosity. Yet beneath the puppy energy, he carried Bella's watchful calm. Sometimes Logan watched mother and son move together across the property and felt as if he were witnessing a conversation without sound. Bella taught Scout things no human could teach. How to wait, how to listen, how to know when a person needed space and when they needed company, how to stand still beside grief without trying to fix it. One crisp October morning, Logan loaded supplies into the truck for a delivery across the county. Scout jumped into the passenger seat before being invited. Bella sat on the porch watching. Logan looked at her. "You planned this too, didn't you?" Her tail moved once. The drive took them past several homes where Bella's puppies now lived. Logan stopped at the young family's farm and watched the adventurous pup race across a field carrying a tennis ball nearly as big as his head. At the schoolteacher's house, another puppy greeted children getting off the bus as if each one had been gone for years. At the rancher's place, the old man sat beneath a shade tree while his dog rested at his boots. "Best partner I've had in years," the rancher said. Logan looked at the dog and smiled. Those words never got old. Scout watched every reunion from the truck window, head tilted, as though he were learning that family could stretch across miles and still remain family. On the way home, the sky turned the color of warm copper. Fields rolled past the windows. Scout slept against the passenger door. Then, near the old storage building, Logan saw Bella by the roadside. He hit the brakes. She had traveled nearly half a mile from the house to meet them. She was not frantic, not afraid. She simply stood there in the evening light, waiting. Scout woke and pressed his nose to the window. Logan pulled over. Bella approached calmly, touched Scout's muzzle through the open door, then turned toward the farmhouse. The three of them walked home together. No leash, no hurry, just the soft sound of boots and paws through grass. Looking at Bella and Scout ahead of him, Logan understood something he had not been able to name before. This had never been only about saving puppies. It was about belonging. Bella belonged to the farmhouse. The puppies belonged to the lives waiting for them. Scout belonged beside him. And maybe, after years of trying to find purpose in distant places, Logan belonged here too. Winter arrived gently that year. Instead of violent storms, light snow settled over the fields like a blanket pulled carefully across sleeping ground. Frost painted the fences white each morning. Smoke rose from the farmhouse chimney. Warm light glowed in the windows long before sunset. Life became wonderfully ordinary. Logan woke before dawn, fed the animals, split wood, repaired whatever had broken the day before, and drank coffee while Bella and Scout rested near the stove. To most people, it would have sounded simple. To Logan, it felt like a gift. Some mornings he still woke with the old restlessness in his chest, that feeling that somewhere beyond the hills there was a mission he was failing to answer. But those mornings came less often now. Purpose had changed shape. It no longer shouted through a radio. Sometimes it padded into the kitchen, rested its head on his knee, and waited for him to notice. One snowy morning, Logan walked into town with Scout trotting at his side. The young shepherd had grown into a handsome dog with strong legs and alert eyes, though he still snapped at falling snowflakes when he thought nobody was looking. Downtown looked like a Christmas card. Lights hung from storefronts. Wreaths decorated doors. People called Logan by name more often now. At the feed store, 3 customers asked about Bella before asking about the weather. Families who had adopted the puppies sent photographs and updates. One dog slept beside a little boy every night. Another rode in the rancher's truck during morning cattle checks. Another had learned to wait at the school gate for the teacher's students. Every story carried the same quiet theme: companionship, joy, belonging. The things Bella had fought to protect. That afternoon, when Logan returned with supplies, Scout ran ahead toward the porch, then stopped so abruptly snow sprayed around his paws. His ears lifted. Logan followed his gaze. Bella stood near the old storage building. His heart tightened for half a second, but she was not alarmed. She was waiting. The same posture from the first day, the same calm certainty. Then Bella turned and walked toward the ridge. Scout followed immediately. Logan hesitated only long enough to set down the feed sack. Then he went after them. The snow-covered valley stretched around them, quiet and bright beneath pale sunlight. The 3 figures crossed the field together, following a path that felt familiar now. When they reached the hidden meadow, Bella walked straight to the oak tree where Margaret's marker rested. Snow softened the ground. The pond was rimmed with ice. The branches above them moved gently in the wind. Bella sat beneath the tree. Scout sat beside her. Logan stood in silence. Nothing dramatic happened. No emergency. No discovery waiting under the snow. Yet the moment felt important, the way some quiet moments do when the heart understands before the mind catches up. Bella looked across the meadow, then back toward the farmhouse in the distance. Her eyes were peaceful. Logan thought of the words on the marker. Being needed is one of life's greatest gifts. Bella no longer needed to beg for help. Her puppies were safe, healthy, loved. The mission that brought her to his door was over. And still, she stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, because she chose to. The realization settled gently in him. Sometimes love arrives in crisis. Sometimes it remains long after the crisis has passed, choosing the same porch, the same people, the same ordinary days. They sat beneath the oak until sunset turned the snow gold. Then they walked home. The farmhouse lights glowed against the gathering dark. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Scout bounded ahead, but Bella kept a slower pace beside Logan. As they reached the porch, snow began to fall again. Logan sat between Bella and Scout under the porch light, watching flakes drift through the darkness. The rescue had not ended. It had simply changed shape. Every safe night, every warm meal, every family formed because of those puppies, every lonely person who found comfort in one of Bella's children. That was the miracle continuing. Quietly, faithfully, in ways nobody could count. Spring returned, and with it came the proof that life keeps moving forward. The hills turned green. Wildflowers spread across the meadow. Morning sunlight stretched over the porch where Bella and Scout rested while Logan drank coffee and watched the valley wake. The farmhouse no longer felt like a place he lived. It felt like a place that had accepted him. Photographs began arriving from the families who had adopted Bella's puppies. Logan pinned each one to a board in the kitchen. One showed a young boy reading under a tree while a German shepherd slept against his side. Another showed the retired rancher smiling from the driver's seat of his pickup, Bella's pup beside him like a co-pilot. Another captured children laughing in a backyard while their shepherd leaped after Bubbles. The board filled quickly. Then it spread to the wall. Visitors stood in front of the photographs and smiled. Every picture told the same story in a different language. Love had multiplied. One rescue had become many. One afternoon, Henry Walker stopped by with a small wooden frame tucked under his arm. "Found this in an old cabinet," he said, handing it to Logan. Inside was a photograph of Margaret Collins standing in front of the farmhouse nearly 20 years earlier. Beside her sat the German shepherd from the journal, with several puppies gathered around them. Logan stared. The resemblance to Bella was astonishing. Not exact, maybe, but close enough to make the room feel smaller. Same intelligent eyes. Same protective posture. Same quiet dignity. Bella walked over and sat beside him. For a moment, the past and present seemed to overlap. Henry smiled. Funny how some stories don't really end. Logan nodded because there was nothing else to say. That evening, he placed the photograph beside Margaret's journal on the shelf near the fireplace. Bella watched carefully, then settled beneath it as though guarding both memory and promise. Outside, spring rain tapped gently against the windows. Not the violent storm that had brought her to his door. A softer rain, the kind that helped things grow. Weeks later, another family drove several hours from 2 counties away just to meet him. Their elderly German shepherd had died that winter, and grief still lived in the way they held one another's hands. They had heard Bella's story through a neighbor's cousin's church friend, the way stories travel in rural places. Before they left, they handed Logan a letter. He opened it that night. They thanked him not for giving them a dog, because he had not. They thanked him for reminding them that hope could return after loss. That love was not over simply because one chapter ended. That somewhere, somehow, there were still good stories waiting to begin. Logan read the letter twice. Then, a third time, Bella rested nearby. Scout slept at his feet. The words stayed with him long after the house grew quiet. Because he finally understood the real miracle. It was not the old building. It was not the journal. It was not even the night he carried 5 weak puppies through the rain. The miracle was what happened afterward. Hope spread. Kindness spread. Healing spread. Like ripples moving across still water, one life touched another, and then another, and then another. On the first warm evening of summer, Logan carried a chair onto the porch. Bella rested beside him. Scout stretched across the steps. Fireflies blinked in the tall grass. Somewhere in the distance, laughter drifted from a neighboring farm where one of Bella's puppies now lived. Logan closed his eyes and listened. Peace settled around him. Not the temporary peace that comes when danger ends. Something deeper. Something earned. When he opened his eyes, Bella was watching him with the same calm certainty she had carried on that stormy day. Logan reached down and scratched behind her ears. "You changed everything," he said. You know that. Bella leaned against his leg. The sun disappeared behind the hills, and for the first time in many years, Logan realized he was no longer searching for purpose. He was living inside it. Summer faded into autumn again. The valley changed color day by day. Golden leaves drifted over the fields. Cool mornings brought mist over the meadow beyond the ridge. The farmhouse stood beneath the changing sky with more life inside it than it had held in decades. Logan thought often about how strange it all was. One storm, one desperate mother, one decision to listen. Everything after that felt like a gift. The kitchen wall kept filling with photographs. The adventurous puppy stood proudly beside a little girl holding a blue ribbon from the county fair. The rancher's dog rode in the truck during sunrise cattle checks. The schoolteacher's shepherd slept beneath a table while children worked on reading assignments. Every image showed more than survival. They showed belonging. Bella often sat beneath the wall, staring up at the pictures. Logan liked to imagine she understood. Maybe she did. She had always seemed to know more than any person expected. One cool September afternoon, Henry arrived carrying a cardboard box with both hands. Found more of Margaret's things in my attic, he said. Figured they belonged here. Logan opened the box on the porch. Inside were photographs, letters, newspaper clippings, and old notes connected to Margaret Collins. Some were nearly 30 years old. Others dated closer to the end of her life. Bella approached immediately and sat beside the box, ears lifted. Logan spent hours sorting through the contents. The photographs revealed a woman who had turned her property into a quiet haven long before anyone used words like rescue or sanctuary. Injured dogs, abandoned cats, a horse with a scarred shoulder, a baby raccoon wrapped in a towel, creature after creature with nowhere else to go. Then he found a letter written shortly before Margaret died. The paper had yellowed, but the handwriting was clear. If this place survives me, I hope it remains a refuge. Not because buildings matter, because kindness does. Logan read the sentence again and again. It felt less like a letter and more like a responsibility placed gently into his hands. Outside, Scout chased leaves across the yard while Bella watched from the porch. The scene answered the question before Logan could ask it. The refuge had survived, not because of walls or fences, because someone had opened a door when help was needed. A few weeks later, the first community gathering happened almost by accident. A couple of neighbors stopped by with food. Then a family who had adopted one of the puppies arrived with pictures. Then Henry showed up with folding tables. By late afternoon, children were running through the grass. Adults were telling stories beneath the trees, and someone had hung string lights between two old oaks. Logan stood near the porch watching it unfold. The farmhouse seemed to breathe differently that night. Like it remembered. Bella moved calmly among the guests, accepting gentle hands on her head. Scout followed close behind, greeting everyone as if they had all been expected. At one point, Logan noticed a shy boy sitting alone near the fence while other children played. Scout saw him too. The young shepherd walked over, sat beside him, and leaned just enough for the boy to feel the warmth of him. No tricks, no command, just companionship. Within minutes, the boy was smiling. Logan shook his head and laughed softly. Some lessons passed naturally from one generation to the next. Late that night, after the last vehicle disappeared down the road, Logan sat on the porch steps beside Bella. Stars spread across the valley. Crickets sang in the grass. Warm light spilled from the farmhouse windows behind them. He looked toward the meadow, then toward the photographs on the kitchen wall, then toward Bella. I think Margaret would have liked this, he said. Bella rested her head against his shoulder. The gesture lasted only a moment. It was enough. The farmhouse was no longer just a place where lives had been saved. It had become a place where lives continued to grow. Years later, people still told the story. Not because reporters came from distant cities or because anyone wrote a book about it. They told it because some stories become part of a place. They settle into the soil. They move through the air. They live in the way people point at an old road and say, that was where she came from. The farmhouse stood peaceful beneath a spring sky. Wildflowers covered the meadow beyond the ridge. The old storage building remained open. Its doors never closed again. Children played in the fields while families gathered under the oak trees. Laughter drifted through a valley where silence had once lived. Margaret's refuge had become real again, more real than she probably ever imagined. Logan stood on the porch one warm evening as the sun lowered behind the hills. Scout was fully grown now, strong and loyal, with Bella's calm intelligence in his eyes. The kitchen photographs had multiplied into albums. Every puppy had become a beloved companion somewhere in the county. Families still sent updates, holiday cards, birthday pictures, stories of ordinary days made beautiful by a dog who loved them. Bella lay beside the porch steps watching the sunset. Silver had begun to show around her muzzle. Age moved gently across her face, but her eyes remained the same, steady, patient, the eyes of a mother who once refused to give up. Scout rested near her, glancing over every so often the way students look toward teachers. Logan smiled. Some lessons never needed words. Across the yard, neighbors prepared for another gathering. Folding tables appeared beneath string lights. Children chased fireflies through the grass. Familiar voices carried through the evening. What began as a rescue had become a tradition. People came not because they needed anything, but because they wanted to remember what kindness felt like when it was shared. As darkness settled, Henry Walker arrived carrying a small wooden plaque. He handed it to Logan without ceremony. Logan turned it over. Carved into the wood were simple words. For every soul that arrived needing help, and every soul that stayed to help others. Logan looked up. Henry shrugged, his eyes softer than his voice. Thought it belonged here. The plaque found its place beside Margaret's journal and the old photograph near the fireplace. Past and present rested together there, not as separate stories, but as one long promise. Later, after the gathering ended and the valley grew quiet, Logan sat alone on the porch. Bella rested against his side. Scout stretched across the top step. Stars filled the sky. Warm air carried the scent of grass and wildflowers. The farmhouse glowed softly behind them. Nobody moved for a long time. Nobody needed to. Some moments are complete exactly as they are. Logan looked toward the meadow where the old oak stood dark against the night. He thought about the storm, the weak puppies, the desperate mother standing in the rain, refusing to leave the door. He thought about the old fuel containers behind the storage building, Margaret's journal, the photographs, the families, the shy boy by the fence, the rancher with his companion, the laughter carried across the fields. He thought about all the lives changed because one dog asked for help and one man chose to listen. Then he looked down at Bella. The German shepherd opened her eyes. Their gazes met. A simple moment, but it held the weight of the whole journey. Logan rested his hand gently on her shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered. Bella leaned into him. No words, no grand gesture. None were needed. The valley stretched peacefully beneath the stars. The refuge remained alive. The puppies had grown. Families had formed. Kindness had multiplied beyond anything Logan could have planned. And at last, the truth felt clear. The miracle had never been hidden behind a door. The miracle was a mother's love that refused to surrender, a man willing to answer it, and the countless lives forever changed because neither one walked away.